This doesn't light your fireman, the pilot lights out.
This football team is coming into our place. We're standing in our way.
This is a game of the heart. Focus and finish.
Hey, have you been treated badly by the fantasy football injury gods? It's almost as if everyone had Julio Jones. I don't think I've ever quite seen a panic like I did yesterday afternoon, with questions coming in from viewer after viewer after viewer wanting to know, what should I do now? So let's take a look at some NFL players you may be able to pluck off your waiver wire list this week, week 6. Now, you're probably not going to want to hear this, and it's rare if my comment doesn't apply to you, but I'm going to be brutally honest. Most fantasy participants, including our viewers, are like sheep. They just follow the herd. Case in point, on the heels of a fantastic Week 5 performance, the ownership of Alshon Jeffrey is up about 26% from last week to about 74%. Now, unfortunately, unless you acted on my recommendation to add him 2 weeks ago, you missed out on his 27 standard fantasy points, even if you've already added him for this week. Now, in Jeffrey's case, all's not lost because he's still, in fact, under-owned. Defenses are not going to be able to double both Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey because Martellus Bennett and Matt Forte will have a party between the hash marks. Now that I think about it, Bennett is only owned in about 65% of leagues, and he's a great add here too, as teams will now be focusing more on the Bears' 2 wideouts. Remember, you need to grab these guys before they break out, not after. That just puts you in a position where you miss the breakout week or the opportunity to grab the player altogether. Adding a fantasy player is not unlike buying a stock. Sure, you can buy a stock at 90 that goes to 100, but wouldn't you rather own it when it's at 20? Le'Veon Bell had a fantastic first game as a pro, contributing in both the running game and the passing game, scoring twice last week, and should be a very valuable fantasy player going forward. In fact, after his performance, his ownership is now up to 72%. However, I wouldn't be using him this week against the Jets. The Jets' defense is firing on all cylinders right now, and the Steelers' offensive line is one of the worst in the league. With Rob Gronkowski coming back either this week or next, Julian Edelman is going to thrive. Linebackers and safeties are going to have to key on Gronk, opening up things for the slot receiver. And you saw how effective he can be in PPR leagues in Week 1 when Tom Brady looked his way. His ownership dropped more than 5% this week to about 70%. And those who dropped him made a grave mistake. Don't confuse the problems that Matt Schaub is having with the fact that DeAndre Hopkins is one of the best young talents in the game. There's a lot of football still to play, and you saw glimpses of what he can do in an explosive week 2. There will be more of those weeks to come. Speaking of great young talents, even after a fantastic first week back from suspension, Justin Blackmon is only owned in about 60% of leagues. Now, don't confuse a productive fantasy receiver with having to be on a good team. Receivers on bad teams actually have the added benefit of racking up fantasy points in garbage time when the defenses they face are in prevent mode. From a talent standpoint, Blackmon is Des Bryant light. If he's available in your league, you're making a mistake not adding him. Last week he was targeted 9 times with 5 receptions for 136 yards and a TD. That's the kind of production you should expect from him week in and week out. I really don't see how you don't add Terrelle Pryor at this point. He's currently tied for the 16th ranked quarterback with Tom Brady by fantasy point performance, and that includes missing a week with concussion symptoms. He's clearly throwing the ball better than anyone expected, and with his ability to run, he's opportunity waiting. He's owned in less than 40% of leagues, and that's just way too low. If nothing else, stash him and give him a whirl when your primary quarterback has a bye. Jay Cutler is only owned in about 36% of leagues, and with Alshon Jeffrey bursting onto the scene combined with Brandon Marshall, Martellus Bennett, and Matt Forte, all as prime targets, you're going to see Cutler start to climb the fantasy ladder. Add him now before it's too late. Now here's one that'll knock your Aunt Connie's socks off, particularly if you're 0-5 or 1-4. Brandon Jacobs is only owned in about 3% of leagues, and for good reason. He's over the hill and not any good, really. In fact, he started off his season getting unemployment checks. But this week may be different. With David Wilson out, he's going to be the feature back. Now, the Giants don't run the ball all that much to begin with, and when they do, they don't do too well. But his backup is Darrell Scott, and he was waived last week and brought back this week just to give Jacobs a blow. And the Giants are going to have to run the ball some to keep the Bears honest. And you know he's the guy for any goal line opportunities. So if you think this is the week where the Giants are finally not going to lay an offensive egg, Jacobs will probably be a part of the success accumulating fantasy points. Again, if you're 1-4 or 0-5, might want to give him a shot. Today's Twitter question comes from @CarryTheRock, who writes, I saw that Jennifer Millman tweeted that both Ray Rice and Bernard Pierce are only averaging 2.9 yards per carry. Are you concerned with Rice? Hell yeah, I'm concerned. Baltimore and Jacksonville are the only two teams in the NFL averaging less than 3 yards per carry. Rice is only 26, but he's in his 6th NFL season with over 1,600 touches already. That's 850 all-purpose yards. And he's all banged up. He's an old 26. Now, coming into the season, Rice averaged well over 4.5 yards per carry. He's producing at about 65% of his career average, and that's just about what you're going to get with him this season. If he has a decent week, I'd try to move him. If you have a question you want answered, hit me up with a tweet, and if I don't use your question here on the show, I'll tweet you back with my best advice. And be sure to tune into the Roto Experts Fantasy Football News Notes and Analysis segment every weekday. I'll be here to keep you current and ahead of the competition, and on weekends, come back for This Week in Fantasy Football as I team up with the King, Scott Engel, covering the week that was, the week that will be, and answering your viewer questions. For Roto Experts, I'm Mike Cardano. Happy Hump Day, everyone. See you tomorrow.